So I will take a few pauses throughout the presentation to take questions. You're also welcome to enter them in the chat box, and Nell will either address them in real time in the chat box or we'll hold them to be addressed later. Finally, keep yourself on mute while not speaking. And of course, you're able to, again, like I said earlier, take yourself off and then on, back and forth as questions arise. So here's the agenda of the meeting. We'll go over the two main programs as well as Margo, the online grants portal. Then we'll briefly review the grants process timetable and then leave some time at the end to address any remaining questions. The General Support Program provides core operating support to arts and cultural organizations of all sizes that have a primary mission to create, produce, or provide arts and cultural programming to enhance the quality of lives for Phoenix residents. Full guidelines and eligibility, as well as the application questions, are available on our Phoenix Office of Arts and Culture webpage listed in the presentation right there on the screen. I'm not going to go over the full eligibility right now, but if you have any questions, I can address those. In general, we provide core operating support to Phoenix-based arts and cultural organizations who have been providing programming and services to the residents of Phoenix for at least 3 years. And that's really the really important piece right there, is that it's a Phoenix-based organization. I know that some organizations did write some questions in the Survey Monkey that asked what they might be eligible for, and I can answer those direct questions a little bit later on. But really, you have to be Phoenix-based to be eligible for our core operating support program. There are some exceptions for the project support program. And then the other piece about that is that you have to be a nonprofit arts and cultural organization. So you couldn't be a nonprofit community or social service organization and receive general support. Also, you couldn't be a business and receive general support. But again, for the project support, there are some exceptions. So we can talk about that in a little bit. As I've shared over email in the past couple weeks to those who've received them, the rental support program is currently on hiatus because of COVID and because of the convention center, and it's complicated, but I'm sure it's not that surprising. We'll provide updates about the program next year when we have them. One requirement I do want to point out in the guidelines is an organization's completion of the cultural data profile. If you've been a past applicant, you're very familiar with the cultural data profile. You have to enter in 3 years of past financial data. So if you aren't familiar, you're going to want to go on our webpage as soon as possible if you're thinking about applying for our general support program, and click on the link to the cultural data profile, and then you'll see you'll get access to create a funders report about your organization. One difference is that this year, if you're an organization that has an operating budget of less than $100,000, then you have the option of instead uploading an operating budget form of 3 years of financials instead of completing the profile through Data Arts. This is this year's adjusted evaluation criteria for the general support program to reflect the changed times that we are in. As you can see, the focus of this year's application is on how an organization continues to engage their community during this pandemic season. I'm going to take a pause right now to address any questions about the guidelines or evaluation criteria.
Hi, Sarah. There is a question. What date do you use for how many years a nonprofit has been in business? We applied for a nonprofit in August 2018 and would like to start this grant August 2021, which will be 3 years.
So just for clarification, is this organization a nonprofit right now? Yes, right?
Yes.
Okay. Yes. So if you are currently a nonprofit, then you are eligible as long as you've had 3 years of recent programming. So if you were operating as a business and offering programming in the past, but don't have 3 years of being a nonprofit so far, then that combination would work. Basically, we want to make sure that you are sticking around. that you have enough leadership and you have the capacity and bandwidth really to maintain as a nonprofit through the years, which is why we asked for the 3 years of programming and also the nonprofit status. I hope that answers the question.
A few more questions. So for following up on the question about the 3 years right now, they said that the first program was in 2019. And then there's another question about when you say 3 years of financial data, are you referring to a fiscal year or a calendar year?
So it depends on how your organization is set up. Some go on a fiscal year and some go on a calendar year. So I can talk to the group after this presentation, and we can kind of talk about the nitty-gritty about your organization. Also with programming, it's really vital that it's not just one event that has happened in a year. We don't offer general operating support for an organization that just offers like one festival per year. That doesn't count as programming for the whole year. So again, it may be a conversation that needs to be held with the applicant about what counts. We just want to see some history of ongoing programming offered to Phoenix residents. And of course, it grows over time, right? You may start out small, and then it's going to become more robust over the year. So we can talk about that. I can talk about that with the individual.
There is also a question about one of the questions in the application for the operating support. Do you want to go over it right now or in a little bit?
Yeah, I'm looking at it right now in the chat. Mm-hmm. Let's maybe look at it in a little bit, if that's okay. Aubrey, I see. Okay, yes, I'm going to go ahead and go on, and then we'll come back to that question at the end. And now if you could just remind me, and then I can bring it up and we can even look at the application together.
Okay.
So the optional racial equity assessment. For those, again, who are on our email list, you're familiar with this, or if you're a past applicant, this is a second year that we are asking applicants to participate in an optional equity assessment of their organizations. If you follow the link provided, you'll see links to a few resources, including a link to the February 9th assessment overview webinar facilitated by Kathy Shea. We have it recorded. There's also an example survey you can use to build your own and share with assessment participants, whether they are board, staff, artists, and or community members. The assessment is due May 7th, and the link to the assessment is on the webpage listed here. So again, a quick overview. This is the second year we've done this, completely optional. It is confidential information. It is not shared with reviewers. It does not figure into your application review at all. It's given to us staff so that we can figure out what kind of training and what kind of resources and education opportunities that organizations in our community are looking for moving forward. And because we received interest last year and communications that they're interested in receiving more education, that's why we brought Kathy Shea to facilitate a pilot cohort program, which is beginning in May. And I'm going to be sending out all the information today to the organization. So keep an eye out for that. And I see that there's a question about, there's a few questions here. One about the survey. The sample survey just has 2 questions. Should we add more? There's just 3 questions. There's one that has participants identifying where on the continuum they identify the organization to be. And then there is an additional narrative question, 2 narrative questions or open-ended response questions. And then we can look at that right now as well. So actually, I'll come back to that at the end, and we'll look at a few links on our website. And yes, I see that just to clarify, the organizations have to be a 501 nonprofit. Thanks, Anel. And then link for the newsletter for regular updates. I'll show you on the website at the end too, where you can sign up for that. That gets sent from our office. I think we send an e-news maybe once a month, maybe twice a month. It has public art updates, funding updates, and general news about the arts sector. So moving on to the project support program. This program supports guest artist fees, expenses, production fees, and marketing expenses for in-person, socially distanced, and/or virtual projects that engage Phoenix residents, including but not limited to arts workshops, pop-up performances, and collaborations with artists. This year, we are offering one project support category as opposed to the 3 or 4 unique categories we've offered in past years. The main reason for this is because we received very few project applications last year, right when the pandemic hit, and we acknowledge that folks are still unsure what the fall and spring may look like. However, eligibility to apply is mostly the same as what it's been in past years, which includes the residency requirement that applicants be Phoenix-based, with the exception of cultural festival applicants. They can be based within Maricopa County, but they don't have to be Phoenix-based, and that is just for cultural festival applicants like an Indian festival, for example. Important eligibility changes include that general support applicants are not eligible to apply for project support grants. So in the past, for our bottom tier in terms of budget size, general support applicants, they could apply for a general support grant, and then they could also apply for a project support grant. And because of the times that we're in right now, this is the year that we're saying you can apply just to one grant. So you have to make a decision about which one you would rather apply to. Also, any project support program applicants can only apply for one project grant. In past years, they've been able to apply for 2 as long as they were unique projects. But this year, again, we're limiting it to 1 project per applicant. Awards are between $1,000 and $2,500. One notable change is that no match is required. For instance, if your project has $1,000 worth of expenses and you ask for $1,000 to cover the entire project, as long as they are eligible expenses, which you can see on our website, our grant can cover the entire project. You don't have to get any kind of matching funding to make it happen. Of course, on the flip side, if your project is $8,000 and you may apply for $2,500, again, you don't have to get a match, but you're going to have to find additional funding, of course, to make sure that your project happens. Thanks, and now for that link. So the evaluation criteria for the project support program in general this year is general this year because there's just one category, but it also considers COVID like our general support program. In the past, we've had very specific criteria for each unique project category, festival criteria, youth arts engagement criteria. And so it's very general this year and very open. I'm hoping that the application is very accessible as well. So I will take a moment to answer any questions about project support, specific to project support. And you're free to chat them, or you can also just unmute yourself and start asking if you have any questions. Now, wait a second.
Okay, there is a question. When you say describe the artist and their role, are you referring to me as the lead art teacher or the student artists who I am teaching? I am outreach art educator. I work with both senior citizens and developmentally disabled youth. Can I apply for each separate group?
So I'm going to address the second question first. So an applicant can only apply for one project grant. So you'd have to choose, if you're asking for funding for a project, it'd have to be the project with the senior citizens or the project with the developmental disabled youth, if they're separate projects. So you could choose one. And then when we say describe the artist and their role, we are referring to the lead art teacher. It would be up to the applicant if they want to also include talking about the youth artists, if that's something that feels valuable and would add to the description of what the project is. So just know that you're talking to panelists at the end of the day, and you're just trying to really help them visualize and understand what the project is, so that when they start reading the narrative responses, they can absolutely see in their mind and their imagination what this project is, who it might benefit, and the logistics, like the ins and out of how this project is going to work. So I will say that we are mostly talking about the actual artists who are working in the project, whether that is a lead teacher artist, but again, it's up to you if you want to additionally talk about the student artists. Again, if there's enough characters, because there is a limited character, I would say start with the lead artist. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and move on to Margot. So Margot is our online grants platform. This is a portal that both applicants and application reviewers use. Returning users can use their previously given usernames to access their accounts and the open funding opportunities. So new applicants registering to Margot, this is what the page looks like. I don't know if you saw on the last page here, there's this part that says new to Margot, register. So you're going to click on that, enter in some information. You're going to get an email once you finish this page here. You're going to pick a group that you identify with. Again, like I mentioned before, to apply to the General Operating Support Program, you have to be a nonprofit 501c3 arts and culture or organization that's Phoenix-based. Once you click on that, it's actually going to list out all the necessary criteria for you to fit this applicant group, and you'll confirm whether or not you are that organization. And then you'll be able to proceed with your registration. If you are one of these other groups or also a nonprofit 501c3, you can apply for the project support. Once you get in, this is what the applicant home looks like. At the top, you can see there's my profile, an organization profile, an opportunity to change your password if you need. In the middle there's funding opportunities, if you have in-progress applications, if you've submitted any applications, if any applications have been approved or you've withdrawn them, and then declined applications. If you click on funding opportunities, right now, you'll see these 4 specific funding opportunities. One, of course, at the top is the project support program. And then there are 3 different tiers of the general support program, 1, 2, and 3, depending on how or what size your budget is. So if you are general support program 1, that means that you have a larger budget, and then there's the mid-size and then the smaller budgets. So if you click into organizational profile or organization profile on the home page, you'll see that there are some extra fields here that have been recently added for you to add some information about your authorizing official, any secondary contact information that you might have. Sometimes there's one primary contact for an organization, and that's the person that we need to respond to about everything grants related or everything about this application. But some organizations want to make sure that the executive director is still receiving information, and that there might be a secondary development person who wants to be on the list for receiving all the updates about their application or about other opportunities. And so you want to make sure that you want to go in and add this information if it's pertinent to your organization. So starting a new application, this is kind of what it looks like. This is the draft version. You're going to have to, it says there, save draft before beginning the application. And so you're going to save it at the bottom. There's a little button, and then you'll be able to start entering information. As I tell everyone who starts writing applications, you really would be best if you could copy and paste these questions into a Word document. That way you can draft your responses, it will do spell check, everything that you need to do. And then when you're done and everything feels really good, make sure you're counting the characters. You're gonna then transfer, copy, paste the information into the actual application on Margo. And you'll want to do it early enough so you make sure that the characters actually do translate to the portal. And if anyone has written grants for a long time, that's like just the best practice to do it in a Word doc and then transfer it later. So here is a timetable. This is a bird's eye view of the timeline. Applications, of course, went live on March 8th, and they'll close on April 1st at 11:59 p.m. We are not available, and Elle and I are not available past 5 o'clock on the 1st. So if you have any questions, you need to get them in before then. You're welcome to schedule one-on-one appointments with either me or Anel. Panels will take place around the same time as they did last year, which is in May. One thing that we learned last year is that panels need to be much shorter, no longer than 2 or 3 hours. So we need more of them, and therefore we'll need more panelists. In June, the commission will meet to vote on the allocations. This is our Phoenix Arts and Culture Commission. Then on July 1st, City Council will vote to approve the allocations. If anyone has any more questions about this timetable, I can explain it more in depth. This is very bird's eye view. And just to go back to a few things, Anel and I are available for one-on-one appointments all throughout this month. And I'll show you where on the website you can go to click that and set just a 20-minute long conversation. If you need longer than that, then just let us know. We can look at your application with you, give you some tips. We can talk about your eligibility, anything you need to do. Neither of us are working in the office still. So we are both teleworking, and the best way to get a hold of us is really to email us and schedule a time to have a virtual conversation or a phone conversation. Or of course, we can interact with you over email. I'll point out about the panels again. Normally our panels, of course, are in person. They're around 4 to 5 hours, very long. They include lunch and coffee and the whole deal, and they're at City Hall. Last year we had long panels as well, just because this was happening right after the pandemic hit and we weren't sure how to change things. But we decided it's much too long to do that long for panelists to hold their attention with all the different responsibilities that they have at home right now. And so we are going to have more panels with more panelists for shorter lengths of the panels. This means that any given panelist is only going to be reviewing around 8 to 10 applications. Sometimes we have one panelist who's reviewing 24 applications, and we can't have that anymore. So they're going to be really focused, and they'll be giving the same amount of attention to an application that they've given in past years, even though they're shorter panels. Another update about the panels is that some updates to our platform, our video platform, is that we are able to have applicants watch the panels happen this year. Last year they had to call in and just listen, which is difficult to do. So you can go ahead and go into the panel. You won't be viewed by the panelists. You'll be watching the presentation. There is a whole thing. You'll be watching the panelists discuss your application. And then of course, your role is to be jotting down any helpful tips, anything that you're hearing from panelists that might help you in future applications. Okay, so that pretty much concludes my presentation. Here's mine and Nell's contact information, which I think you can find pretty easily. I'm going to stop sharing this presentation, take a few questions as I open up our web page and show you some of that stuff. So does anyone have any questions right now? Is there anything else I missed, Anel, in the chat?
No, there's a question from Tina, but we will talk about it in a meeting later today.
Okay.
I did want to mention that the projects, not only do organizations have to be based in Phoenix, but also the projects have to benefit Phoenix residents.
Right. Okay. And does anyone else have any questions right now before I bring up our grants page? Okay.
Okay, I have one. In the past, we've had people, well, would perform in Phoenix, but it's COVID. So our singers are from the metropolitan area of Phoenix. So are you saying, I'm not sure what you mean as far as the Phoenix thing at this point.
For Anna, are you talking about the general support program?
Yes, because, we've kept going with our singers and there have been some virtual performances online and stuff, but I'm not sure. Some of the singers don't all live in Phoenix. Some may live in Tempe, or I live in Cave Creek. People live all over the metropolitan area, even though our main addresses are in Phoenix. So what does that mean as far as Phoenix is concerned?
You're fine. Anel's talking about the project support program. So you are,
okay.
yeah, you are a
Okay.
Phoenix-based organization, and you are primarily benefiting Phoenix residents. Of course, you work with artists who come from all over, and that's absolutely fine. You know that we ask in our final report some information about your work with Phoenix artists, and we have in past applications, but this year our questions are more specific to COVID. So you won't be answering any Phoenix artists question this year in the application. But yeah, if you've been eligible to apply in the past, then you're still eligible to apply for the general support program. The project support is a little trickier. And we can talk about that with individual applicants. Thanks for the question though, Anna.
Yeah, Sarah, this is Tina Ferguson from Heartsy. We do the same thing. We're virtual. We're based out of Phoenix. But the project that we want to do with the developmentally disabled youth are through the Arc of Tempe, but those kids live all over the valley. If we could have them maybe tell us where their participants come from, would that help us qualify, or how would you exactly do that if there's not many groups that help the developmentally disabled kids, so they come from all over to go to that one program?
Right. So I know that Anel mentioned, I think that she's meeting with you later today, and we can talk if there's any more confusion or it sounds like a complicated project. We have specified in the past that the project has to be in Phoenix. So I know that they're virtual, and there's lots of exceptions right now for virtual, but if it weren't happening virtually, would it be happening in Phoenix? And it sounds like it's happening in Tempe. Is that right?
I've held them all over, but yes, when I did do 2 projects in person with them, they were in Tempe.
Right. So our virtual is just really an exception for this year. Of course, moving forward, who knows how COVID is going to affect all engagement moving forward. But a virtual is a change for this year. So it sounds like the project is ineligible because it's not based in Phoenix. But when Anel meets with you later, she can hear if there's more complexity and talk to you about all the ins and outs of that.
Sure. And I work with so many groups, I can always change it to a Phoenix group instead of the Tempe group.
Okay.
Thank you.
And I know that Tempe also has funding, and they're a really great grants group as well. We all communicate. So across the city is about the different funding opportunities that are available in each city.
Great, thank you.
Okay, so unless anyone else has any questions, I'm going to go ahead and share our page.
Sarah, there was that question about the application for general support. Is that the one you're going to share?
Yeah, I'll go into that. I'll go into that right now. We'll look at the question. Okay. So I think you can all see the grants page here. This is not our homepage, so I'll go over to our homepage. So if you click on phoenix.gov/arts, this is what you'll get. Just to point out a couple other helpful places you can land. If you're ever interested in what kind of workshops we have coming up, there's a place you can go there. Grants is right here, which I'm clicking on. Here on this side, you'll see some helpful resources, a link to the general support program project, register for the grants orientation, which we'll take down, and then we'll also link you to a recording of the orientation. I'll send that to everyone on an email as well. The grants program timetable, which I'll click on here. This you already saw, that you saw on my image on the presentation. You can schedule one-on-one appointment for general support program. That will take you just to a Calendly application where you can select it, and it will sync up with my calendar. And just to point out that I'm generally a great person to reach out for all things general support, and Nell for all things project support. Of course, we can speak to the other sides. We're a small team, so we talk quite frequently. I'm going to go ahead and click on the general support program, and we can look at that question. So what question was it? Do you remember?
Yeah. So it says that they're curious about the difference between questions in section 1 and 2, especially the difference between evolved or new engagement strategies and even evolved modes of delivering programming.
Okay. So for the artistic cultural value question, yes, we want you to list if you're engaging your audiences in any new way, whether that's like virtual classes or, there's lots of things. There's classes that are going on Instagram for Phoenix Center for the Arts. I know that they've been doing that. What are advantages and disadvantages of these delivery modes to the organization's primary art and cultural forum? This is a really, this is a question for us to learn about you as an organization. There is one applicant I was talking with one time, and they were doing some virtual arts instruction, musical arts instruction for youth. And they were telling me how amazing it had been. They'd been really connecting with their with their audience, with their community, maintaining relationships with young people. And so everything seemed to be going really well and sounded like this is great, and maybe virtual classes are wonderful. And then at the end, of course, I said, well, how is this affecting their ability to really pick up the skill, like really develop their skills in terms of music? And they're like, oh, it's awful. Like they're just not picking up the skills, of course, that they would if it was in-person instruction. And so there is a question about like, how are you continuing to engage your audience, like maintain relationships, even though they may not be benefiting from the cultural form as well? Like what is, like how complicated is it to really deliver that form, and how has that been impacted? And so that's how that applicant might respond to that question for artistic cultural value. They may say, we've been doing all these virtual classes, but this is where our kids are falling in the development of their musical instruction and development. So that's how they would answer that. And then that's different than community significance because that's really about the relationship and the engagement. It's not so much about the actual artistic and cultural form. It's about how are you just staying in touch with folks? How are you, how have you pivoted? How are you pivoting in your ability to communicate with them and talk about that? I hope that answers the question. So one is really specific to the arts and cultural form that your organization's doing and how COVID and different kind of learning engagement has impacted the delivery of that. And one of them is about how are you keeping up these relationships? That's a long-winded way of explaining it. I hope it got it.
Yeah, this is Aubrey. That was really helpful. Thank you. I do also have a question about the video section, but I don't know if that's something that might be better to talk about one-on-one.
You can ask it if it's a general question. It might help someone else.
Okay, so we were curious, we normally submit a video that's very general, like a preview of all the programming that the theater, the puppet theater normally does. But obviously a lot of that programming has changed. So we were wondering if we should create something new this year or if we should still showcase our normal programming.
So one thing that panelists really respond to well is any video that communicates what your artistic or cultural form is, like what programming looks like for your organization. It may have been past programming, and that's okay. It still gives them a sense of who you are and the quality of programming that you deliver. So I always tell folks less like anniversary videos. There are a lot of people talking about the organization and more some images or some video about the actual program. So we know it looks really different now, and everyone's going to take that into consideration and be understanding.
Great, thank you.
Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and just point out a couple other things. Down here, you can see the cultural data profile for those who are new to this. This is where you would click, and it would take you to their website where you can start your funders report. A couple other things.
Now I'm getting the printer.
Is down here the equity assessment. So if you click on that, and again, this is just for the general support applicants. This is not for the project support applicants. Here's the actual activity that you would be due by May 7th, and then the continuum on becoming an anti-racist arts and culture organization is right here, and that's the resource that people are referring to when they're assessing the organization. And then this is the example survey that we created. Someone who's participating in an assessment of the organization would click, let's say, I've assessed the organization, I've looked at the continuum, and it looks like I would say that our organization is at a 3. And then they'd have these 2 additional questions to explain those choices. So they're going to explain why they chose that place on the continuum, and if there is any, just their process of reaching that decision. And then what is our organization's role as part of the broader community in achieving racial equity? So this would be their personal perspective about it, if that's what they wanted to share. So this is a model assessment for participants in the survey of your organization that you would give. Again, you can change the language to really fit with your organization. And I'll just click on this, and then when you're ready, when you've collected all those survey responses, whoever is reviewing them, and again, we really want them to be anonymous to protect participants, then you'd collect all the information, and then yourself as a representative of your organization, select which place on the continuum in general, based on all of that information that you might think your organization would be. And so maybe most of the participants of this survey selected number 3. So you'd select number 3. Maybe a bunch of them selected number 5, and then other ones selected 2. And that's complicated, right? So you would talk, maybe you'd select 3 and then talk about how half of your staff selected 2 and then half of them selected 5 and why that might be. So, you know, it's not so clear cut all the way. It's a complicated process. Someone did ask me that they had done this assessment last year and should they do it again this year? And my response to them was that when an organization I was a part of did the same activity, they did do an assessment one year and reached a conclusion that they were much more further along in their progress. And then they did the same assessment a year later, same staff, they did the same assessment a year later, and then actually ultimately decided that they weren't as far along in their process in achieving racial equity in the organization as they had thought. So a year of education and training may change where you think your organization is. On the other side, maybe so much training and education could really propel you further along in the continuum. And so that's something that you would want to talk about. So those who've done it before, you may want to do it again because you may learn something new. You can also open up the survey to more folks in your community, and they may have different things to say. So was there anything else I was going to look at on the website, Anel? I can't remember.
I don't think so, but there was a clarifying if the EDI assessment is optional, and I just mentioned that yes, it is optional.
Absolutely, 100%. And again, it's private, so it's not going to reviewers, it's not going to the city manager's office, it's not going to city council, it's not going to other funders. It's going to me and Anel if she wants to read them. And it's just so that we can know what education we should be offering moving forward. Yes.
Last time you could get extra credit if you did it. Is that still true?
Right now, we don't know that answer.
Okay.
If that ends up being the case, we'll communicate that. But right now, that's not on the table because of the times that we're in. So.
Okay.
Well, I think that about wraps up everything unless anyone has any final questions. Okay. Well, thank you so much for being with us today. And I will send a recording of this presentation later today or tomorrow morning, and then you'll be able to view it and then some other resources. And again, if you want to reach out to me or Anel and set up an appointment or just engage over email, we're happy to do that as well. And I hope you guys all have a great rest of your day.
Thanks, Sarah.
Thanks. Bye, you guys.
Thank you.
Thank you, Sarah.
Thank you.
Thanks.